Week 17 of the fantasy football season with championship week here for fantasy owners. He's the top 36 running backs. I'm ranking this week number one, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. I said it all season long coming into the year. As long as he's healthy and playing, the production's going to be there for CMC. And obviously it's been all season long. Last week he put on another clinic at the Indianapolis Colts. And this week back home in San Francisco with a bad team that's middle of the pack defense. I think CMC, once again, has a big game to Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. It's been another monster season for Bijan. 5 games, over 150 yards from scrimmage. And this week it is a tougher matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams. But last week we saw Kenneth Walker have a good ball game versus defense. So Bijan, he's matchup proof regardless. And he's on having another monster season. Number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. So Gibbs having a monster year. David Montgomery took a big backseat this season in the backfield, where it's been Gibbs' backfield. And more weeks than not, it's at least 15 or more fantasy points for Gibbs. So this week on the fast track in Minnesota, and a defense I think is going to be tired out early and often on the field a lot. I like Gibbs to go out there and have a big game. Number 4, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. The only consistent option in this offense for Miami all season long has been Achane, and pretty much you pencil him in 15 or more fantasy points weekly. It's been for Achane. He's got the home run hitting ability. We saw last week a 48-yard touchdown, and one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield. So this week in a good matchup versus Tampa Bay, I think Achane will continue to put up his numbers like he has all season long. Number 5, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. So the last couple weeks, James Cook, he's putting up some monster numbers, and he's been a solid back all season long, but now he's in that elite back status over the last month of the season. So this week it is a tougher matchup versus the Philadelphia Eagles, but James Cook, physical in between the tackles, his cutbacks are pretty much unstoppable once he's in the open field. And this week versus Philly, I still have confidence he could go out there and put in a good game. Number 6, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Chase Brown, it's been a solid second half of the season, and obviously this whole offense has gotten boosted up their numbers with Joe Burrow back in the lineup. So this week in a matchup versus a bad Arizona Cardinal defense, I think Brown will go out there, put up his numbers. We saw he had 3 touchdowns in last week's game in Miami. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but definitely 100 total yards and a touchdown or 2 in this one. Number 7, Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Saquon, the last couple weeks, he's starting to get it back. Is Barkley had a big run last week in that victory at the Commanders. This week, not a great matchup at Buffalo, even though Buffalo's run defense has been shaky for the most part this season. So I think Barkley getting things going. This offense has played way better over the last few weeks here, and Barkley's starting to get in mid-season form, even though it's at the end of the season. It's good, obviously, for fantasy owners who made it this far, and also for the Eagles' playoff push. Number 8, Travis Etienne, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this offense has totally turned around this season with Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator with the Bucs, and now came as the head coach for this Jaguar team. And everyone's putting up big numbers. And Etienne, he was a guy you like, maybe should I take him 6th, 7th round? He was just sitting there. Now he's been one of the best backs all season long. So this week in a good matchup with the Colts, I think Etienne will continue to put up his numbers. Number 9, Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. So last week he wasn't 100% with the knee injury, but he's been gutting it out, only missing 1 game this season with the knee injuries, Jacobs. And next season, he's possibly a back-end first-round pick. So this week, a good matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens. Their defense can't stop anyone for the most part, especially on the ground. And Jacobs, even at 60, 70%, let's say, he's still going to go out there and get his numbers. Number 10, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. So this week, a good matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know the Jaguars, they're putting up a lot of points. I know their defense has played better over the last few weeks, but Jonathan Taylor, still, he's going to go out there and get his numbers as Taylor, one of the more elite backs in fantasy football this season. So with Phillip Rivers in there, quarterback, Taylor, he was catching a couple passes out of the backfield, which is rare for him as well in last week's game. And this week, I think, once again, versus Jacksonville, he'll have a good ball game. Number 11, Ashton Jeanty of the Vegas Raiders. So last week in a very tough matchup at Houston, Jeanty went out there and had one of the best games of his NFL career. So Jeanty, obviously, this season, he didn't live up to the bill where he was taken in the first, early second round. But we've seen the flashes, we've seen the talent. And hopefully next season they can improve the offensive line and also the quarterback position. But this week it is a good matchup, the New York Giants, where I think he'll go out there and have a good game once again. 12, R.J. Harvey of the Denver Broncos. So Harvey, it's been a solid rookie season for him. And obviously he's taken over the running back job completely since J.K. Dobbins has been out for about a month now. So this week it is a tougher matchup at the Chiefs. Well, we just saw Tony Pollard go out there and rush for 100 yards. So I think Harvey this week, he'll be fine, and we know he's a good dual threat out of the backfield. 13, Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. So his work's starting to go down a little bit as Henry. We saw last week he had a big game, but there were a lot of drives where it was a Keaton Mitchell drive where they just threw the football in that drive was this Baltimore Raven team. So this week it is a tougher matchup at the Green Bay Packers, one of the better defenses in the league. But Derrick Henry, even at 32 years old, he's still going out there and putting up elite numbers more seasons than that. 14, Javonte Williams of the Dallas Cowboys. He was a good one-year deal fine this season, was Javonte Williams. So we'll see if they re-sign him this offseason, because if he goes somewhere else, I don't think the numbers are going to be as good. With this Cowboy O-line, one of the best O-lines in the league, and obviously when you got an offense with CeeDee Lamb and Pickens, teams aren't going to load the box, and you're going to have a light box and run well. So this week it's a good matchup at the Commanders, and Javonte, I think he'll do what he's been doing all season. 15, Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. So this week a good matchup at Atlanta. It is a 50-50 split pretty much with him and Blake Corum, but both these running backs weekly are going out there and getting in numbers, and this week it could be a high-scoring game at the Falcons. 16, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. Travion Henderson, he's in concussion protocol. He got hurt in last week's ball game, unfortunately, at the Baltimore Ravens. But Stevenson, he took over in that second half. He did find the end zone late in that one. And this week, it's a slam dunk matchup with the New York Jets, a defense that can't stop anyone. So I think Stevenson, he'll go out there and have a good ball game this week. 17, Kenneth Gainwell of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Kenneth Gainwell, one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield. And it's pretty much a 50-50 split with him and Jaylen Warren, and now with DK Metcalf out 2 games suspended. I think they're going to lean on him even more as a receiver as Gainwell, and that's where his upside's better than Jaylen Warren, and this week it's a pretty decent matchup at the Cleveland Browns. 18, Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this week a good matchup with the Miami Dolphins, a defense that can't stop anyone. But it just seems like this run game is getting abandoned more times now. With Tampa Bay, they're looking to throw the football a little bit too much. But this week, like I said, it is a good matchup at Miami, but still Rachaad White, Sean Tucker getting touches in that backfield, and the upside's capped off a little bit. 19, Amarian Hampton of the Los Angeles Chargers. So the last couple weeks now, Hampton's got more touches than Vidal. Vidal's banged up with a neck injury, left in last week's game, even though it's looking like he's going to give it a go this week versus Houston. But this week it is a tough matchup versus the Houston Texans. But Hampton, a physical running back in between the tackles. I know he missed a lot of time with his ankle injury was Hampton, but this week versus Houston, I still think he could go out there on volume alone and be productive. 20, Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So last week, 2 game-breaking runs to have a monster day. It was for Jaylen Warren at the Detroit Lions. And this week, a pretty good matchup at the Cleveland Browns. We just saw James Cook dismantle that defense in last week's game. So Warren, just out of the backfield, he's not going to catch the football much. And also Kenneth Gainwell, the last few weeks has taken more work. 21, DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. So DeAndre Swift, he's having a solid season. And this offense is pretty solid with Ben Johnson, first season as the head coach for the Chicago Bear team. So this week it's a beatable matchup at the 49ers. We saw last week Jonathan Taylor have a good game. And we even saw Phillip Rivers go up and down the field versus defense. 22, Woody Marks of the Houston Texans. Looks like there's going to be a good chance he's back in this ball game. This week here's Woody Marks, where last week he missed it. Jawad Jordan filled in. He played pretty decent. And this week it is a tougher matchup, regardless if he's in or not, is Woody Marks. With Chargers, they got a run defense that's pretty solid. The defense is playing better of late. And also, with Herbert getting healthier and keeping this defense fresh and off the field like he did last week at the Cowboys, I think Woody Marks, it could be a little bit of a down game. 23, Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. It took him 16 weeks, but last week was easily the best game of the year for Kenneth Walker. And he stepped up in a big ball game for the division over there versus the Los Angeles Rams. So this week it's a tough matchup again, though, at the Carolina Panthers, where their defense is definitely better at home than it is on the road. But Kenneth Walker, we know he's got home run ability. We know he's a decent receiver out of the backfield. And this week at the Panthers, I think he'll be all right. 24, Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. So Tracy's definitely taking over this backfield now. With him and Singletary were splitting for a little bit, it seemed like. But now Tracy, the last few games, has put up big numbers and taken over. And this week it is a good matchup at the Vegas Raiders. 25, Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers. So Rico Dowdle early in the season took over the backfield for this Panther team. We had a couple games over 200 yards from scrimmage. In the last couple weeks, it's been up and down for Dotto, and this week it is a tougher matchup versus Seattle, where I don't think his ceiling's that high. 26 Breece Hall with the New York Jets. So Brady Cook, once again, the rookie's going to start. And Breece Hall this season, they really haven't used him much as a receiver out of the backfield, unfortunately. So this week, it is a tough matchup versus New England Patriots, one of the better defenses in the league. And also with the Jets not having much on their offense, I think New England's going to load the box early, stop Breece Hall, and once New England's up, a big score in this game. Jets are going to have to abandon the run, and like I said, Breece Hall really isn't catching the football out of the backfield this season. 27, Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. So the last few weeks he's going out there, he's putting up numbers, is Tony Pollard. All of a sudden, the first 12, 15 weeks of the season, his numbers weren't great, and he was struggling. But now he's going out there, he's making plays, he's rushing over 100 yards, and this week it's a pretty decent matchup versus the Saints. 28, Michael Carter of the Arizona Cardinals. So with Connor, Trey Benson, Bam Knight out for the season. Carter was the next man up. And last week I wanted to see him get a few more touches in that game, where he had 6 yards per carry in that ball game versus the Atlanta Falcons, and it was still close where he could have. But this week at Cincinnati, this could be a track meet between these two teams. And Michael Carter's a running back that could do a little bit of everything, and DeMarcado isn't really a threat to taking touches from him. 29, Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings. That's not looking good for Jordan Mason to play in this game, but Aaron Jones, pretty much his ceiling is 10, 12 fantasy points, and this week it's going to be a tough matchup versus Detroit. Max Brasmer is going to be in there quarterback, and we saw a few weeks ago at Seattle, he was a train wreck and couldn't get anything going. So I think with those factors, and they could be down early and often, Aaron Jones, he's not going to have a high ceiling. 30, Blake Corum of the Los Angeles Rams. So like I said, Blake Corum, he's the guy. He's in a 50-50 split now with Kyren Williams, and both these running backs are definitely usable for fantasy owners. Where Corum now, 3 games in a row, double-digit fantasy points. This week, pretty good matchup with the Falcons, fast track indoors on Monday night. And also to have 10 days off from playing Thursday last week and to play Monday night, these guys, after blowing that ball game, they're going to come out with more motivation, I think. And Blake Corum's definitely going to be part of it. 31, Chris Rodriguez of the Washington Commanders. He's the running back over there for this Commander team. Krosky Merritt early in the season was the guy, and they've even had confidence to trade away Brian Robinson Jr., but now it's been Chris Rodriguez's backfield the last month of the season, and this week it's a good matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. But the thing with him is, well, the ceiling isn't as high, but he could have a decent ball game, I think, versus Dallas, and especially if Quentin Williams is out once again. 32, Zach Charbonnet, the Seattle Seahawks. So Charbonnet, we know, is a touchdown-dependent goal line back for the Seattle Seahawks team. Last week he had a nice ball game in the victory versus the Los Angeles Rams. But this week it's going to be a tough sledding type of game, I think, for Charbonnet, where this Panther defense is way better at home than it is on the road. So this week, Charbonnet, I just don't see him doing much. And like I said, if he's not scoring a touchdown, he's not going to catch the football out of the backfield, and he's not going to get a lot of points. 33, Kyle Monangai for the Chicago Bears. So Monangai, it's been a solid rookie season, but obviously it's still DeAndre Swift's backfield. But Monangai, I think in the next couple years, definitely could be a good fantasy option for owners. So this week at San Francisco, as a change of pace back and hoping he plops into the end zone for a goal line touchdown. He's low on the list. 34, Emmanuel Wilson of the Green Bay Packers. He's another running back as well. If he was on another team, I think Wilson could be really solid. We saw the game he filled in a few weeks ago for Jacobs. He had a big game. So Wilson last week, Matt LaFleur said they rode the hot hand in the second half of that game. He had a good game, 14 carries, 84 yards. And this week it's a beatable matchup versus Baltimore, but Josh Jacobs, after coming off a bad loss for this Packer team, blowing that game, I think they're going to really run heavy with Jacobs, especially if Love's out and Wilson's not going to get many touches. 35, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. So this season, it's been a total difference than it was last year. It was 50-50 split, and at times it still seemed favored that David Montgomery was out touching Gibbs, but obviously this season it hasn't been the case, and especially since Dan Campbell's taken over calling duties for this Lion team, that's been the case. So this week in Minnesota, he's a low ceiling running back as well that you hope has a goal line touchdown in the 36 and final back-up rankings. Audric Estime of the New Orleans Saints. Estime, he took a back seat in the backfield last week. We thought he was going to be the guy once. Obviously, Devin Neal went out with injury. But then it was Taysom Hill last week who was getting the carries for this New Orleans Saints team. So this week, we'll see how the backfield's going to play out, where you just don't know with Taysom Hill. We saw it last season. Some weeks he was getting 8 to 10 total touches a game, and then other weeks he was barely touching the football. So this week at Tennessee, estimated me, if you're in deep desperation to put him out there in your starting lineup, then you do it at Tennessee, because he's still going to get anywhere from 8 to 10 touches at the Titans. So that's the top 36 running backs I'm ranking for Week 17 of the fantasy football season.